If you do certain things quietly, without telling anyone, without explaining yourself, and without needing attention, there's a strong chance you're far smarter than you've ever been told. Not loud smart, not obvious smart, but the kind of intelligence that works silently behind the scenes. Highly intelligent people often don't stand out the way movies or school taught us they should. They don't always talk the most. They don't rush to answer. They don't feel the need to prove how much they know. And because of that, they spend years thinking they're average, slow, or even behind. If you've ever been the person who stays quiet while everyone else talks, this is for you. If you think deeply but explain very little, this is for you. If you do your best thinking alone and rarely show it, this is for you. There are things intelligent people do every single day that never get noticed because they happen in silence. No one claps for them. No one points them out. Sometimes, no one even realizes they're happening at all. And that's the problem. Silence gets misunderstood. People assume that if you're quiet, you're unsure. If you don't react fast, you don't understand. If you don't speak up, you don't have anything valuable to say. Psychology shows something very different. Some of the clearest signs of intelligence don't make noise. They happen internally, in private moments, when a person is thinking, noticing, questioning, and processing more than most people ever do. You might already be doing these things without realizing what they mean. You might even judge yourself for them. You might think you overthink too much, feel too deeply, or take too long to decide. But what if those habits aren't problems? What if they're signals? In this video, we're going to talk about 7 things people often do in silence that psychology links to intelligence. These aren't skills you learn. They're patterns that show up naturally when a mind works deeply and carefully. Some of these will feel very familiar. Some may make you uncomfortable. And at least one will probably change how you see yourself. If you've ever felt like your mind is always busy even when you're quiet. If you've ever felt misunderstood because you don't explain everything you think. If you've ever felt smarter on the inside than you look on the outside, stay here. Because by the end of this video, you may realize that the things you've been doing quietly, without recognition, are exactly what show how intelligent you really are. Most people grow up with the wrong idea of what intelligence looks like. They're taught that smart people speak fast, answer quickly, and sound confident all the time. The person who talks the most is often seen as the smartest in the room. The person who stays quiet is often ignored. But psychology tells a very different story. Many intelligent behaviors don't show up in public. They happen quietly, inside the mind, long before anything is said out loud. They happen when someone is thinking things through, replaying situations, noticing details, or choosing not to speak at all. That's why this video focuses on things people do in silence. Not because silence itself is special, but because silence is where intelligent thinking often lives. When there's no pressure to perform, explain, or impress, the mind is free to work the way it naturally does. This video isn't about trying to prove that you're smart. It's not about comparing yourself to anyone else. It's about understanding why certain quiet habits exist and why they matter more than most people realize. Psychologists have noticed that intelligent people often process information internally first. They think before reacting. They reflect instead of rushing. They ask questions in their head that never get spoken out loud. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. From the inside, a lot is happening. And that gap between what others see and what's really going on is where many intelligent people start to doubt themselves. They assume their quiet habits don't count. They think they're slow, unsure, or socially behind, even when their mind is working harder than most. So they try to change. They push themselves to speak more. They rush decisions to keep up. They ignore their inner process to fit expectations. Over time, this creates stress and confusion. You feel tired without knowing why. You feel out of place without knowing what's wrong. This video is meant to slow things down. We're going to look closely at 7 silent behaviors that psychology links to intelligence. Not in a dramatic or motivational way, but in a simple, real-life way that actually makes sense. As you listen, don't try to match yourself to every point. Intelligence doesn't look the same in everyone. What matters is noticing patterns and understanding why they exist. Some of these silent behaviors help people learn faster. Some help them avoid mistakes. Some protect them emotionally. And some quietly make life harder when they're misunderstood. Before we break down the 7 behaviors themselves, there's an important problem we need to talk about. A problem that causes intelligent people to misunderstand themselves long before anyone else does. The main problem for people who do many things in silence isn't a lack of intelligence. It's living in a world that misunderstands quiet thinking. From an early age, most environments reward visibility. Speaking up, answering fast, showing confidence, even when that confidence isn't backed by much thought. The louder you are, the more capable you appear. The faster you respond, the smarter you seem. So when your intelligence works quietly, it goes unnoticed. You think before you speak. You pause before reacting. You process internally instead of externally. And slowly, without anyone meaning to harm you, you start receiving signals that something about you is off. Teachers might say you have potential, but don't participate enough. Friends might say you're hard to read or too quiet. At work, louder voices may get credit even when your ideas are better thought out. None of this feels dramatic in the moment, but over time, it shapes how you see yourself. You start believing that intelligence is something other people have, something visible, obvious, and confident. And because your intelligence doesn't look like that, you assume it must be weaker. This is where the internal conflict begins. Inside your head, there's constant activity. You're thinking, connecting ideas, noticing patterns, questioning assumptions, and replaying moments to understand them better. But because all of this happens silently, you feel invisible. And invisibility slowly turns into self-doubt. You begin to wonder why others seem so sure while you're still thinking. Why simple decisions feel heavy. Why your mind doesn't just switch off the way it seems to for other people. You don't realize that your mind is doing more work. You just feel tired. Another part of the challenge is that silence leaves space for others to assume things about you. When you don't explain every thought, people fill in the gaps. They may think you're uninterested, distant, shy, or unsure. Sometimes they assume you don't care, when in reality you care deeply. Correcting those assumptions takes energy, and many intelligent people decide it's easier to stay quiet than to constantly explain themselves. But that choice comes with a cost. You may feel alone even when you're around people. You may feel unseen, even when you're contributing in your own way. You may feel like there's a wall between you and others that you never meant to build. There's also the pressure you place on yourself. Because intelligent people think deeply, they often hold high standards internally. They replay conversations. They analyze mistakes. They imagine how things could have gone better. This happens quietly in private moments. No one sees the effort. No one sees the learning process. They only see the calm surface. So when something goes wrong, intelligent people often blame themselves more than anyone else would. They think, I should have known better. Or why didn't I say that? Or why did I take so long to decide? Without understanding where this habit comes from, reflection turns into harsh self-judgment. Another challenge is emotional overload. Intelligent people often feel deeply, but they don't always show it. They process emotions internally. They think about what they feel before expressing it. Sometimes they never express it at all. From the outside, they may look steady and unaffected. On the inside, they may be carrying a lot. Because they seem calm, others may rely on them for logic, advice, or support, without realizing they also need space to unload. Intelligent people become listeners and problem solvers, quietly absorbing more than they release. Over time, this leads to exhaustion, and because it all happens internally, it's easy to miss until it shows up as burnout, withdrawal, or numbness. The biggest challenge underneath all of this is simple but powerful. Highly intelligent people often misunderstand their own silence. They think it means they're weak, slow, or unsure. They don't see it as a natural part of how their mind works, so they try to fight it. They push themselves to be louder. They rush decisions that need time. They ignore their inner process to meet outside expectations. And in doing that, they lose trust in themselves. This video exists to break that pattern. Because once you understand why you do certain things in silence, you stop treating them like problems. You stop trying to erase them, and you start using them with awareness instead of shame. But to do that, we need to look closely at what these silent behaviors actually are, and why intelligent minds develop them in the first place. That's where we go next. Now that the challenge is clear, we can look more closely at how these silent behaviors actually work in real life, and why intelligent minds develop them so naturally. The first thing to understand is that silence is often a form of filtering. Highly intelligent people don't share every thought because they have too many of them. Their mind produces ideas, questions, and connections constantly. If they spoke every thought out loud, it would sound messy and unfinished. So instead, they filter internally. They ask themselves questions before anyone else does. Does this make sense? Is this useful to say? Is this the right moment? This happens automatically, and it happens in silence. The second important behavior is internal problem solving. When something goes wrong, intelligent people often turn inward first. Instead of reacting emotionally or blaming others, they try to understand what happened. They replay events, analyze choices, and look for patterns. This inner work builds learning and growth over time, but because it's invisible, it often feels lonely. No one sees the effort. No one sees the progress being made inside the mind. The third behavior is delayed expression. Many intelligent people don't express thoughts or feelings right away. They need time to sit with them, to understand what they actually think or feel before putting it into words. This can make them seem distant or slow to respond, but it's actually a sign of emotional and cognitive depth. They don't want to speak until they understand themselves first. The fourth behavior is mental simulation. Intelligent minds often run what-if scenarios quietly. They imagine outcomes before acting. They test decisions mentally instead of physically. This helps them avoid mistakes, but it also makes them cautious. From the outside, this looks like hesitation. Inside, it's preparation. The fifth behavior is quiet self-checking. Intelligent people often ask themselves hard questions. Was I fair? Did I miss something? Could I have handled that better? This habit supports growth, but without balance, it can turn into self-doubt. Because these questions are asked silently, no one reassures them. They carry the weight alone. The sixth behavior is selective engagement. Intelligent people often choose carefully where to spend their energy. They don't jump into every conversation or situation. They watch first. They wait. They decide if something is worth engaging with. This selectiveness protects their mental energy, but it can also make them seem distant or uninterested. The seventh behavior is quiet emotional processing. Instead of reacting strongly, intelligent people often feel emotions deeply but privately. They need time to understand what they feel and why. Silence becomes a safe space for emotional clarity. Together, these behaviors form a system, a quiet system that allows intelligent minds to function without overload. And when you see them clearly, you begin to understand that silence is not emptiness. It's structure. It's the mind organizing itself before moving forward. Once this becomes clear, the silence starts to feel less confusing and more intentional. It stops feeling like something you need to fix and starts feeling like something you can work with. And that realization brings us to the turning point of this video, the moment where silence shifts from doubt to strength. This is the moment where everything finally comes together. Up to now, we've talked about silence as a habit, as a pattern, as something intelligent people do without thinking about it. But here's the deeper truth that most people never realize, and that many intelligent people never fully understand about themselves. Silence is not the absence of intelligence. It's the result of intelligence working at a deeper level. Highly intelligent people don't stay quiet because they have nothing to say. They stay quiet because their mind is busy sorting, testing, and weighing ideas before letting them out. Their thoughts don't move in a straight line. They branch out. They connect. They loop back. And because all of this happens internally, it creates a strange experience. You feel like you're doing a lot, but it doesn't look like much from the outside. You're thinking through options while others are already speaking. You're noticing details while others are focused on the surface. You're replaying moments to understand them while others have already moved on. And because of that gap, you start to question yourself. You start wondering why others sound more confident when you've thought things through more carefully. Why people who rush decisions seem so sure, while you hesitate even when your reasoning is solid. Why your mind feels heavy while others appear relaxed. This is where many intelligent people get stuck. They mistake depth for weakness. They think, if I were really smart, this would be easier. They think, if I were more confident, I wouldn't think this much. They think, if I were better, I wouldn't need so much time. But that belief is backwards. The truth is, your silence exists because your mind is doing more work than most people ever see. It's filtering noise. It's checking logic. It's weighing consequences. It's protecting you from acting on impulse. And when you don't understand that, you end up fighting yourself. You try to speak before you're ready. You rush choices that deserve time. You ignore your instincts to fit in. And every time you do that, you feel more drained, more disconnected, and more unsure. This is the turning point. Because once you see that your silence is part of how your intelligence works, the story changes. You stop asking, why am I like this? And you start asking, how can I work with this? You realize that needing time alone isn't avoidance. It's recovery. That thinking deeply isn't overthinking. It's processing. That staying quiet isn't fear. It's choice. And that realization brings relief. You stop forcing yourself to keep up with people who think differently. You stop comparing your inner world to their outer behavior. You stop measuring your intelligence by how loud or fast you are. Instead, you begin to trust your own pace. You give yourself time to think without guilt. You allow silence without judging it. You choose when to speak instead of feeling pressured to fill space. And slowly, confidence forms not the loud kind, but the steady kind. The kind that doesn't need approval. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that knows its value even when no one else notices. This is where intelligence stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a tool. Not a perfect tool, not an easy one, but a powerful one. When you understand how to use it, you realize that your mind isn't broken. It isn't slow. It isn't behind. It's just operating at a depth that the world doesn't always reward. And once you accept that, something important happens. You become calmer. You become clearer. You become more intentional. You stop wasting energy trying to be someone else, and you start building a life that fits how you actually think. This doesn't mean silence will always feel easy. You'll still think deeply. You'll still replay moments. You'll still feel things strongly. But now, you won't mistake those traits for flaws. You'll see them for what they are. Signs of a mind that pays attention. A mind that processes carefully. A mind that values meaning over noise. And that understanding changes everything. It changes how you talk to yourself. It changes how you make decisions. It changes how you relate to others. Because when you stop fighting your silence, it stops fighting you. And that's the real shift this video is meant to create. If this helped you see your mind more clearly, watch another video on the channel to keep exploring how intelligent minds really work.